a couple of minutes earlier than normal, as we'll shortly be bringing you live, uninterrupted coverage of President Moon Jae-in making his 2020 budget speech to lawmakers at the National Assembly. Once the speech is over, then we'll bring you the rest of the day's news. So all in all, we'll be with you for the next hour or so. First, though, the headlines. President Moon readies to address the National Assembly. His government is asking for a big budget for 2020 to tackle South Korea's economic woes head-on. Live coverage coming right up. South Korea's Prime Minister is in Tokyo for the enthronement ceremony for Japan's new emperor. However, most attention is on his meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe as the two sides look to break the deadlock in their trade spat. Plus, U.S. President Donald Trump again praises his close personal relationship with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. He says they share mutual respect for one another. So we are awaiting President Moon Jae-in giving a speech at the National Assembly on next year's budget, the fourth speech of its kind that he's given since taking office in 2017. The president is set to call for bipartisan support in reviewing and confirming next year's budget of around $440 billion US. That is an over 9% increase on year. He will speak about ways to breathe life into the South Korean economy in 2020 after a rather tough, it must be said, 2019, and explain the direction of the government's expansionary fiscal policy aimed at getting people into work and for making life easier, hopefully, for regular people here in South Korea. We'll have English translation of the president's speech for you. You're looking at live pictures from the National Assembly now. Let's listen in as the National Assembly Moon Hee-sang says a few words from the podium before President Moon.
The President, Moon Jae-in, has personally visited the National Assembly, and I, myself, as National Assembly Speaker, am very honored, and I believe that this will be an opportunity for the government and the National Assembly to enhance cooperation. And now we will have the briefing of the 2020 National Budget Proposal Plan from the government. In just a moment, President will come in for the briefing. The President is now entering the plenary chamber.
나중에 듣겠습니다. 예. 존경하는 국민 여러분.
Fellow Koreans,
국회의장과
the Honorable
국회의원
Speaker
여러분.
and the distinguished members of the
저는
National
오늘
Assembly.
지난 2년 반
Today, I will
동안의
present to the public and the National Assembly the fiscal management achievements made during the past 2.5 years and the government's budget proposal for fiscal year 2020 and ask for your cooperation in passing it. During the past 2.5 years, my administration has made endeavors to change the economic and social order to be people-centered.
노력해 왔습니다. 잘 사는
We
시대를
have
넘어
laid the stepping stone for
함께 잘 사는
innovative
시대로
and
가기
inclusive
위해
nation to go beyond an era of being well off to an era of being well off together.
지금까지 우리 사회는
Until now,
시대에
our society has
역동적으로
developed by
대처하며
responding dynamically
발전해
to the
왔습니다.
times.
부모 세대가 이룩한
On top of the economic
경제적
foundation
토대
set
위에
by our parents'
아들, 딸
generation,
세대들이
our sons and
민주주의의
daughters
가치를
have established the
정립했습니다.
value of democracy.
우리가 책임 있는
We were able
중정국가,
to grow into an accountable middle power and a
성장한 것은
democratic country thanks to the
모든
hard
세대,
endeavors put
모든
forth
국민의
by all our
땀방울이
generations
모아진
and
결과입니다.
citizens.
우리 사회는 지금 개인의 가치가
Our
커지고
society is now witnessing
인권의
bigger individual
중요성이
value,
자리 잡아가고
and thus the
있습니다.
importance of human rights is
모든 사람의
increasing.
노력을 보장하는
We are seeking to make an
공정한
equitable
사회를
society
추구하고 있습니다.
that guarantees the efforts of all
그만큼
people.
다양한 목소리가 나오기
We began to
시작했고
have diversity
서로에
in
대한
voices,
이해와
and today's era
다름에
desperately
대한
calls
반론과
for cooperation
다양한
amidst
속의 협력이
understanding and
어느
embracement
때보다
of such
절실한 시대가
differences.
되었습니다. 지금은
Now
우리가
it
가야
is
할
high time that we
목표에
muster our
다시
strength
한번
to head to the direction that we are headed.
수십 년 동안 못
While we
해왔던
haven't been able to make
우리
achievements throughout the
소재
past
부품 장비
decades in
산업의
the area
산화와
of domestic production and
수입 다변화에서
diversification of imports
불과 100일 만에
within the material
의미 있는
components
성과가
and equipment
나타나고
industries,
있습니다.
we are witnessing meaningful achievements in just
중소기업이
100 days.
먼저 손을 내밀어
Conglomerates have reached out their
함께
hands to
맞잡았고
SMEs,
국민들의
and thanks
응원으로
to the public
잠재되어
support,
있던 우리
our
과학 기술이
potential science and
기지개를 폈습니다.
technology capacity is finally making first
새로운
moves for
시도는
development. While the
두려울 수
initial
있지만
attempts may be unfamiliar and
우리의 의지가
fearful,
모아지면
we may have confirmed that we
해낼 수
can
있다는
do
것을
anything when we
우리는
muster our
확인했습니다.
determinations.
이제 우리 정부 남은 2년
Now it
반을
is time for the government
준비해야
to
할
prepare for the
시점입니다.
remaining 2.5 years.
혁신적이고
I
포용적이고
believe that making a nation where everyone is well off together by achieving innovative, inclusive, equitable, and peaceful economy is the road that we should take.
이러한 방향으로 마련한
I ask the National Assembly to gather your wisdom on next year's government's budget proposal, which has been prepared under such direction.
존경하는 국민 여러분,
Fellow Koreans,
의원 여러분,
distinguished members of the National Assembly,
재정의 과감한
there has
역할이
been no
어느
time in the
때보다
past when a bold fiscal role has been needed.
저성장과 양극화,
In order to tackle low growth, bipolarization, job issues, low birth rate, aging society, as well as other structural issues of the society, fiscal sector should be at the forefront. With the prolonged U.S. China trade tensions and spread of protectionism, the world economy is deteriorating at a fast pace, and our economy, which is highly dependent on trade, is also faced with severe difficulties.
적극적인 역할을 하여
Having the fiscal sector play a more proactive role, it needs to become a seawall that can protect us from the high waves of external shock. Moreover, it also needs to become the priming water that can bring economic vitality. There are many who are concerned about the fiscal stability of our nation. This is an area, of course, that we need to have our eyes on. However, the fiscal and economic capacity of the Republic of Korea has grown enough to enable more citizens to enjoy a higher quality of life, and thus it is very stable. Even when we carry out the government's budget plan as it is, next year's national debt ratio does not exceed 40% in comparison to the GDP. It is significantly lower than the OECD average of 110%. And we stand in higher territory, the highest territory, in fact, than any other nation in terms of fiscal stability. Lately, the IMF has forecast that the year's economic growth rates will record the lowest since the 2009 financial crisis, and recommended nations to expand fiscal expenditure in a bold manner to overcome the global economic turndown. In particular, it has pointed to Germany, the Netherlands, and the Republic of Korea as countries that can respond to expansionary fiscal policies having sufficient fiscal capabilities. In the World
한국은
Economic Forum's National
141개국
Competitive
가운데
Report, Korea also
13위를
ranked 13th
기록했습니다.
place among 141
2016년
countries.
26위에서
It
크게
is a
올라갔고
significant jump from 26th
정부
place in
출범 이후
2016 and is the third
2017년부터
consecutive
3년간
enhancement
연속해서
since 2017 when my
15위,
administration was
13위로
inaugurated. It has jumped from 17th, 15th
특히 우리는
to 13th
도시
place
경제
now.
안정성과
In the area of
정보 통신
macroeconomic
분야에서
stability
2년
and
연속
information and
1위를
communication
차지했습니다.
sector, we have topped the list for the second consecutive year.
또한 3대 국제 신용평가기관 모두
In addition, the world's three major credit rating agencies rate South Korea's national credit rating as higher than that of Japan and China.
우리 경제의 견실함은
This
우리
shows
자신들보다도
that our economy
오히려
is being
세계에서
evaluated highly
높이
by the world
평가하고
rather
있는
than
것입니다.
by ourselves.
우리 정부는 최근 2년간
During the past 2
세수
years, my
국채 발행
administration
규모를
has enjoyed
당초
favorable
계획보다
tax revenues,
28조 원
and thus we've
축소하여
reduced the amount of
재정
national
여력을
bond
비축했습니다.
issuance by 28 trillion
내년도
won.
적자 국채 발행 한도를
Expanding the
26조 원
limit
늘리는
of
것도
deficit
이미
financing
비축한
bond issuance for next
재정
year by
여력의
26
아니라는
trillion won
말씀을
is
드립니다.
also within the range of the fiscal space that we
지난
have
2년 반
secured.
동안 재정의
For the
많은
past 2.5 years, the
역할로
fiscal
혁신적
sector
포용국가의
has helped
포석을
to lay the
놓았습니다.
cornerstone of for an
재정이
innovative and inclusive
마중물이었고
nation. It has played the role of priming water, and the private sector helped to
그러나 이제
expand
겨우
this.
정책의 성과가
The effects, however, are
나타나기
just beginning to be
시작했을 뿐입니다.
visible.
우리 경제가 대외 파고를 넘어
Until the day when
활력을
our
되찾고
economy is vitalized
국민들께서도
fully,
삶이
overcoming external
나아졌다고
difficulties,
체감할 때까지
and when the
재정의
citizens feel
역할은
with their own
계속되어야
skin
합니다.
that their livelihoods
우리가
have become
지금
better,
제대로 대응하지
the
않으면
fiscal sector should
머지않은
continue to
미래에
play its role.
더 큰
If we do not
비용을
respond
치르게 될
appropriately
것입니다.
now, we will have to pay a bigger
내년도
price
확장
in a
예산이
not-too-distant
선택이
future.
아니라
This is why
필수인
expansionary budget for
이유입니다.
next year is not a matter of choice.
존경하는 국민 여러분, 의원
Fellow
여러분,
Koreans, distinguished
재정은
members of the
국가
National
정책을
Assembly,
실현하는 수단입니다.
the fiscal sector is a means to
특히 예산안과
materialize
세법 개정
national
안에는
policies.
우리 사회가
In
가야 할
particular, the budget
방향과
proposal and
목표가
taxation
담겨 있습니다.
amendment proposals entail the direction and aims for our society. Next year's budget and taxation amendment proposals entails 4 goals of innovation for a more vitalized economy, inclusion to make a warmer society, equity to make a just nation, and peace to make a brighter future.
담겨 있습니다. 이를 위해 정부는
To this end, my administration has increased the total spending by 9.3% compared to this year to 513.3 trillion won, and increased total revenue by 1.2% to 482 trillion won.
첫째, 우리 경제의
First of all,
혁신의
the
힘을
fiscal
키우는
sector shall
재정입니다.
enhance the power of innovation of
4차
our
산업혁명
economy.
시대 혁신의
In
힘은
the fourth industrial revolution
땅속에
era, the
내장된
power of innovation
유전보다
has bigger
가치가
value
큽니다.
than the oil fields that are buried
혁신 역량이
underground.
곧 국가 경쟁력의
Innovation capacity
핵심입니다.
is the essence of national
창의를
competitiveness.
북돋고
When we
도전을
support
응원하고
creativity
실패를 두려워하지
and the spirit
않는
of challenge,
열정에 의해
can we make
미래의
future
성장
growth
동력이
engine with the passion
만들어집니다.
that does not fear failure.
전 세계가
This is
혁신의
also
힘을
why the
키우기
entire
위해
world is
총성
engaged in a
없는
bulletless
전쟁을
war
치르고 있는
to
것도
intensify
이
the
때문입니다.
power of innovation.
지난 2년 반 동안
During the
정부는
past 2.5 years,
혁신을
my
응원하는
administration has set up
한국 국가를
startup
국정 과제로 삼고
country that supports
신성장
innovation
산업
as
전략,
our national state
제2벤처
affairs
확산 전략,
and carried
수소경제
out
로드맵,
new growth industry
혁신
strategies,
금융 비전
second venture
등을
boom expansion
추진하며
strategies,
혁신
hydrogen
역량을
economy
키우기 위해
roadmap, and innovative
투자해왔습니다.
finance vision.
그 결과
As a
혁신의 힘이
result, the power of
살아나고
innovation
있습니다.
is coming to life.
지난해 신규
Last
벤처
year's venture
투자가
investment
사상
has
최대치인
reached its record high
3조
of
4천억 원에 달했고
3.4 trillion Korean won,
올해도
which is
4조
also
원에
expected to
이를
reach
것으로
4 trillion this year.
신설 법인 수도
The number of
지난해
newly
10만 개를
established
돌파했고
corporations has surpassed
올해 더 늘고
100,000
있습니다.
last year and continues to
유니콘
increase
기업
this
수도
year. The number of
2016년
unicorn
2개에서
companies has also
올해
jumped from 2 in
9개로 늘어 세계
2016 to
6위를
9,
기록했습니다.
which stands at the world's top
새로운
6th
도전을
place.
향한
The
혁신의
ambience
분위기가
of innovation
확산되고
towards
있습니다.
new challenges is now spreading across the country.
그러나 아직도 제2 벤처
However, it's
붐의
still too early to
성공을
say that we
말하기에는
have achieved
이릅니다.
success in the second venture boom. Next year, we will intensify our economy's power of innovation even more. We will invest 1.7 trillion won in data, network, AI, which are the essence of the fourth industrial revolution, and 3 trillion on new growth industries, including system semiconductor, biohealth, and future cars. 2.1 trillion won will also be allocated to core material components and equipment industry, which is a significant increase from this year. In order to overcome the sluggish exports and investment following the world economic slowdown, we have expanded export financing to over 4 trillion won and will endow more tax incentives for corporate investment. Regional economy vitalization, 3 major projects will also be unfolded to enable innovation and economic vitality to begin from regional provinces, backed by daily life SOCs, balanced national development projects. Second, the fiscal sector helps enhance the strength of inclusiveness and equity of our society. When we lower conflicts and pay more attention to the marginalized, and when we share the yields of innovation with the rest of the society, can our social capacity be enhanced? This itself is inclusion. Equity is the foundation for innovation and inclusion. The government has intensified the social safety net for the vulnerable class and expanded tailored jobs for the youth, women, and new seniors, and has spared no investment in making the foundation for an inclusive nation. As a result, the power of inclusion is spreading to all corners. First of all, income conditions are being enhanced. In the second quarter of this year, household income and labor income have all showed the largest rate of increase in the past 5 years. The income of the lowest 20% bracket, which has caused a great concern with continued drop in the effects of aging society, has turned to an upward trend. Backed by the increase in work incentives and other policies, we hope that the income of the lowest brackets will be enhanced even further. The job market is also continuing to recover. The average employment rate until September this year is the highest, with 66.7%, while youth employment rate also showed the highest level in 12 years. In August and September, the number of employed exceeded 450,000 and 340,000 respectively, with the annual increase in the employed to exceed our target of 150,000. Also exceeds 500,000. However, there are more room for improvement. The quality of jobs need to be better. We need to prevent the downward slope in manufacturing sector and the employment of those in their 40s. We need to further intensify the power of inclusion and equity of our society. First of all, we will make the social safety net more close-knit. We will decrease the gray area of basic living guarantee and increase the beneficiary households to 79,000 and to enable 200,000 people who are not being benefited from the employment insurance, and we will provide them with incentives and support services. The fairness and inclusion of education sector will also be enhanced by expanding the free education to sophomores from high school. And from next year, it will be applied to all school grades, and our free education will be completed. The young generation is the future of our society. We will increase the supply of youth rent households to 29,000, and we will provide youth incentives and tax benefits.
여성의 사회 참여가
When we have
높아질수록
increased social
사회는 더
participation
풍족하고
of women,
발전합니다.
can we have a more mature society?
고령화의
It is also
대안이기도
an
합니다.
alternative to the aging society.
경력 단절 여성의 재취업에
We will
대해
help the employment
소득세
of women
감면
with
지원을
disconnected
더
career
넓히겠습니다.
and expand their income tax
고령화
incentives.
시대의 어르신은
The
더
seniors
오래 사회
of
발전의
the
동력이
aging
되고
society
일하는 복지를
should serve
누릴 수
longer
있어야
as
합니다.
the driving engine of our
어르신들의
society.
좋은
They
일자리를
should
위해
get the
더 많은
welfare
재정을
by
투입하겠습니다.
working.
공익형 등
We will
어르신
make more
일자리도
senior
13만 개
jobs,
더해
and the number
74만
will
개로
be
늘리고
increased to
기간도
740,000,
연장하겠습니다.
and we will expand their term as well.
재정으로
With the
단시간
fiscal
일자리를
sector,
만든다는 비판이 있지만
there are also criticisms that this will increase short-term
의문의 여지가
jobs.
없을
However,
것입니다.
we shall all agree on that
그와
there is
함께
nothing better
내년부터
than working in
저소득층
terms of
어르신
welfare.
157만
We
명에
will also
대해
expand
추가로 기초연금을
the basic
30만
pension
원으로
of
인상하겠습니다.
300,000 won to 1.557 million people.
자영업자와 소상공인은 우리 경제의
The
당당한
self-employed are
주체입니다.
also very
긴급 경영
important
안정자금
and
문자와
crucial agents within
특례
our
신용보증을
economy.
대폭
We will
늘리는
increase
한편
the
공유리
finance
상품권과
and their
지역사랑
incentives
상품권도 크게 늘려
dramatically,
총
and we will
5조
also
5천억
issue
원
5.5
발행하겠습니다.
trillion won of gift certificates.
셋째, 우리 미래
Third, the fiscal
평화의
sector
힘을 키우는
intensifies the
계획입니다.
strength of peace, which
한반도는
is the
지금
future of our
궁극적 평화로 가기
society.
위한
The
마지막
Korean Peninsula
고비를
is going through
마주하고
the
있습니다.
final hurdle
우리가
to
함께 넘어야
to
할
establish eternal
대화의
peace.
벽입니다.
And this is the final goal
대화만이
of
그 벽을
denuclearization that we
무너뜨릴
need
수
to
있습니다.
overcome together. Only dialogue
상대가
can
있는
do
일이고
so.
국제사회와 함께 가야 하기
We have a
때문에
counterpart,
우리
and we have
마음대로
to work with the
속도를 낼 수
international
없지만
society, and thus we need to
핵과
keep
미사일
the pace.
위협이 전쟁의 불안으로 정복되던
However,
불과 2년
compared
전과
to
비교해
the
보면
past,
우리가 가야 할
compared to
길은
2 years ago when
명백합니다.
uncertainties were
우리는
intensified
역사
with
발전을
the
믿으면서
nuclear and missile
평화를 위해
threats,
할
the
수
road
있는
that we should take
대화의
is very
노력을
clear.
다해야 합니다.
We need to make efforts to continue a dialogue.
우리의 운명을
We
남에게
ourselves must
맡기지
determine our
않고
own
우리 스스로
destiny,
결정하기 위해
and this
반드시 필요한 것이
is
강한 안보입니다.
also very needed in
지금
terms of
우리의
having
안보
a strong
중점은 대북
strong
국지력이지만
security and safety. Of
언젠가
course, North
통일이
Korean
된다 해도
deterrence is very
열강
important in
속에서
terms of our
당당한
security.
주권 국가가
When,
되기
even though
위해선
when we have an
강한 안보 능력을 갖춰야 합니다.
unified country, we need to have a strong defense capability.
국방비를
And this is why we
내년
have
예산에
enhanced the
50조 원
national
이상으로
defense budget to
책정했습니다.
over 50 trillion won next year,
차세대 국산 장수함,
including next generation
정찰 위성 등
domestic
핵심
submarines,
방어 체계를
surveillance
보강하는
equipments,
한편
as well as other core
병사 월급을
defense strategies and
병장 기준으로
equipments will be
42만
enhanced,
원에서 54만 원으로
and the level of
33%
salary
이상의
of the soldiers will be
국방
enhanced to
의무를 보상하겠습니다.
540,000 from the current 410,000.
국제사회의 책임 있는
We will
역할을
play
다하고
our utmost
지지와
role in the
협력을
international
넓혀가기
society
위해서
and expand
최선을
to
다하겠습니다.
gather cooperation and
공공외교와
support.
ODA 예산을
We will
대폭
expand the
늘려
budget for public
평화와
diplomacy
개발의
and
선순환,
ODA,
지속 가능한
and we will
성장을
continue
지원하겠습니다.
sustainable development as well
특히
as
4대 강국과
continued
신남방,
peace and
신북방과
development.
같은
The four
전략
major
지역을
powers and new
중심으로
southern and northern
집중
policies will continue to have
한반도의
bigger
평화가
portions
정착되면
within our
우리
national
경제는
budget.
새로운
When we have
기회를
peace
맞게
established
될
on the
것입니다.
Korean Peninsula, our economy
남북 간
will be
철도와
encountered
도로를
with new
연결하고
opportunities.
경제,
We can
문화,
connect the
인적
roads
교류를
and
더욱
railroads
확대하는
that
등
go between the two
한반도 평화와
Koreas,
경제 협력이
and we can
선순환하는
expand the exchanges of
평화
economies,
경제 기반 구축에도
culture, and
힘쓰겠습니다.
people to people.
북한의 밝은 미래도 그 토대 위에서만
Based on the
가능할
peace
것입니다.
economy, we will also be able to
북한의
expand
호응을
and bring a
촉구합니다.
brighter future for North Korea. I urge for North Korea's support.
존경하는 국민 여러분,
Fellow Korean
국민의
citizens,
다양한 목소리를 엄중한 마음으로
we have heard
들었습니다.
your call with serious minds. We have once again reaffirmed the strong calls for equity and reform. Throughout the past times, the government has made its utmost efforts to eradicate the privileges and irregularities. However, the requirement that the public had was even higher than our efforts. The public has called for us to eradicate the public fundamentalities and eradicate legal and irregularities. And the public has called us to have more equity and justice as we go up in the social elites. And as the president of the country, I have more severe burden. Only when we have equity can we have innovation, inclusion, and peace. Not only in economy, but in the areas of society, education, and culture, we need to have equity. We need to meet the standards of the people and the citizens, and we will carry out more strongly reform for equity. Centering around the Council for Anti-Corruption Policies for Equitable Society, we will make sure that equity can make deep roots within our society. Fair economy is the basis of an inclusive nation. By eradicating the hierarchies within the economic system, we have renewed our transaction practices. However, we still lack. There are still room for improvement. We will pass the Commerce Act, Fair Trade Act, Fair Outsourcing Transaction Act, as well as Financial Consumer Protection Act. The public is most concerned about the inequality within the education sector. We will carry out the status quo investment of the school areas and to eradicate the hierarchies within the high school systems. And we will also increase the ratio of college entrance exams, and we will have an overall overhaul in the education system. And in relation to employment, we have carried out National Audit Agency's investigation into the public sector recruitment, and this is also being enhanced in other sectors as well. Until the day when we have no recruitment corruptions, we will continue to have these audits, and we will help to save the victims, and we will carry out the improvement in our systems. Tax evasion, military service, and discrimination within workplaces are some of the inequalities that are present within the lives of our public. We will meet with the standards, with the calls of the standards. Honorable Korean citizens, as well as distinguished members of the National Assembly, we have heard that the prosecution reform is urgent, and no authority can be above the public. The prosecution should have execution by respecting the human rights. And last year, my administration has reported to the public the prosecution reform measures that can carry out without the need of law amendments. We will enhance the human rights protection regulations, including the overnight investigation as well as investigation prohibition of separate unfair cases and the prevention of criminal case disclosure will also be enacted within October. And we will also enable the public to become an effective organization for the public. And until this very day, we will continue on with the reform. Not only the public, but also many prosecutors believe that this is the role model of the prosecution. I also asked the National Assembly to make the most crucial role in terms of prosecution reform. The Investigative Power Adjustment Act and Investigative Department for Higher Level Public Officials should also be passed as soon as possible. While there are still controversies on the need of the independent probe into high-level public officials, if we were able to have a prosecution that were able to reflect on its past, then what other alternative do we have? This independent department is needed to eradicate the authority-based and authority-centered corruption. If it were able to carry out its role appropriately as the authority-centered corruption, state affairs meddling would not have happened. The Special Investigative Unit will also have increased attention among the government, my administration, as well as other public officials. It will make our society more healthy and transparent. We also cannot delay the public calls on livelihood and safety. As we begin to expand the reduction of working hour next year, we need to have an urgent, flexible working period and supplementation legislation. In order to effectively respond to the fourth industrial revolution, we need the pre-legislation on data. Also, we need a special act on material, components, and equipment. The Venture Investment Act, the Agriculture Income Act, as well as the Self-Employed Act and the Kindergarten III Acts are also sitting at the National Assembly. In relation to the public safety and disaster response, there are Firefighters Act, and we have the Basic Youth Act, as well as Domestic Violence Act for the youth and the women. And the National Assembly Act is also sitting at the National Assembly. I ask the National Assembly to have greater interest in the public's call for livelihoods and safety. Currently, within the opposition parties, there were many concerns on the recruitment process of the public institutions and the personal measures and the real estate issue resolvement, as well as other issues that are related to fairness. I believe that we can yield great results when the leading and opposition parties, as well as the government, sit together for talks. Without the legislation from the National Assembly, can these policies be heartfelt by the public, especially for the sake of public unity and to resolve future political bipartisan tensions? We need to have the consultative body among the leading opposition party and government. We need to also vitalize the meetings of the leaders of the parties, and so that the 20th National Assembly can conclude with great yields. Fellow Korean citizens and distinguished members of the National Assembly, I always dream of a Republic of Korea where everyone is well off together. We need to develop even further the achievements that we have made together. When there is great harmony between the conservatives and the progressives, can we move towards a new era?
정치는
I
항상
believe politics should
국민을
always be
두려워해야
fearful
한다고
of the
믿습니다.
public.
저
I
자신부터
myself will
다른
begin to
생각을
listen
가진
to the
분들의
others
의견을
with diverse views,
같은 생각을 가진 분들과 함께
and will reflect
스스로를
upon ourselves
성찰하겠습니다.
with those who share the same opinions.
과거의 가치와
The
이념이
values and
더 이상
ideologies of the
통하지
past are
않는
no
시대가
longer
되었습니다.
effective in today's era.
어떤 일은 과감하게
Some measures
밀어붙여야
need to
하고
have boldness,
아쉽지만
and there are
다음으로
other
미루거나
measures that need to
속도를
be
조절해야 할
delayed
일도 있습니다.
or adjusted with their speeds.
제때에 맞는 판단을 위해
And I
함께
believe
의논하고
that discussion
협력해야
and cooperation is
더 많이
necessary.
더 자주
And I
국민의
aim
소리를
to
듣고
listen
국회와
to the
함께하고
voices
싶습니다.
of the public and cooperate with National Assembly going forward.
마지막 정기국회를 맞이한 만큼
And marking the last regular session of the National Assembly, I hope that we can
내년도 예산안과
we can move towards passing the bills which are mounting and to pass
이생국회로
the next
평가받기를
year's
기대합니다.
national budget proposal as well.
혁신의 힘,
The power of
포용의 힘,
innovation, inclusiveness,
공정의 힘,
equity,
평화의 힘을 키우고
and peace
함께
should be
잘 사는
enhanced
나라.
to make a nation that
아무도
we can
흔들 수
live
없는
well together
강한 경제가
and a robust economy that cannot be swayed by anyone
국회에서부터
should be
실현되길
realized here
희망합니다.
at the National Assembly.
감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
Okay, there we have it. President Moon Jae-in speaking for just over half an hour at the National Assembly. Quite a wide-ranging speech, receptive audience from his own party, but we did hear a few boos and jeers from the opposition parties, as you might expect at a politically charged time like this, especially after the recent resignation of the now former Justice Minister and the subsequent fallout from that. We are going to get a wrap-up of what we just heard there from the National Assembly. For that, I'm glad to say we're able to connect to our presidential office correspondent Shin Se-min, who's currently at the top office for us live. So Se-min, the president focused on a whole range of topics there, not just the budget during his parliamentary address. What to you stood out the most?
Mark, like you said, a lot to digest, but the general focus is getting that mega budget to pass through the parliament for next year so that the government can continue on with its expansionary fiscal policy. It was the president's fourth State of the Nation address at the National Assembly since taking office 3 years ago, and much of the focus today was building a nation that's fair for all. But the underlying message, again, is getting that is the president's call for both sides of the political aisle to support the government drawn budget for next year worth $440 billion, a 9.3% increase compared to this year. One of the major points he brought up during his speech today, creating a fair nation.
경제뿐 아니라 사회, 교육, 문화 전반에서 공정이 새롭게 구축되어야 합니다. 국민의 요구를 깊이 받들어 공정을 위한 개혁을 더욱 강력히 추진하겠습니다.
And contrary to the president's previous message when he called on the administration to create a fair and just economy, this time he included other parts of the society to carry that fairness. And such a call, perhaps, like you have mentioned, closely linked to the recent political controversy surrounding the now former justice minister. And Moon's ultimate message, unchanged, however, that his administration will use the remainder of its term to create an innovative, embracive, fair nation where all people can prosper. And all of that through executing the state budget at the right time. So again, calling for united support from the parliament in getting that budget passed. Mark?
Okay, well, he's got quite a tall task on his hand, getting the opposition on side with his planned budget, so we'll just have to see how that pans out. But it must be said, though, that the president didn't only focus his speech on the budget and creating a fair economy like I suppose many people would have expected, but he also touched about peace on the Korean Peninsula. The negotiations between the two Koreas seem to have gone off the rails, of course, in recent months. He called on North Korea for it to be responsive to Seoul. So tell us more about that.
Right, that's the interesting point. It's perhaps one of the most recent times that President Moon had called on North Korea for its response, perhaps indicating that the two Koreas had not been in contact in recent weeks. And the president also referring to what many consider as a deadlock with both the North and the U.S. not having any visible contact in recent weeks, said that the relevant parties of the nuclear talks are facing a critical moment. Listen to this.
한반도는 지금 항구적 평화로 가기 위한 마지막 고비를 마주하고 있습니다. 우리가 함께 넘어야 할 비핵화의 벽입니다. 대화만이 그 벽을 무너뜨릴 수 있습니다. 상대가 있는 일이고.
And he added that the nation and the relevant parties of the nuclear talks must do all they can for peace through dialogue. And this is perhaps where the president is sending a message to both leaders Kim Jong-un and President Donald Trump to drive up the speed of the denuclearization talks. And mind you, they haven't been in contact face-to-face since February this year. And moving forward, the president said North Korea's bright future can only be possible on the foundation of a virtuous circle of peace and economic cooperation, and called on Pyongyang for its response. That's all I have for now. Over to you, Mark.
Well, that was our Shin Se-min at the Presidential Office. Thank you very much for that report, Se-min, and fill us in even more detail during our next newscast at noon. Thank you. Now, in the rest of the day's news, South Korea's Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon has arrived in Tokyo for a 3-day visit. He begins his official schedule by attending today's enthronement ceremony of Japanese Emperor Naruhito. Lee will meet Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Thursday. This will be the first meeting between the two since South Korea's Supreme Court rulings on wartime forced labor last October. Lee will deliver President Moon Jae-in's message verbally or via letter and express Seoul's willingness to improve their frosty bilateral ties. Their meeting, however, is only going to last around 10 minutes, so in order to get into deeper discussions, Lee might try to arrange a summit between Moon and Abe in the near future. And U.S. President Donald Trump has talked about North Korea for the first time since the breakdown of the working-level talks with the North in Stockholm. During a cabinet meeting on Monday, President Trump emphasized that his relationship with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is still good. He said that if it wasn't for him, the U.S. would have been in a big war with North Korea, adding that former President Barack Obama had told him his biggest problem was not knowing how to solve the North Korea problem. According to Trump, Obama had tried to call Kim 11 times during his presidency, but those calls were all rejected, while Trump's calls were answered. And President Trump has indicated that efforts to end the prolonged trade war with China are progressing well, adding Beijing has already started making massive purchases of American farm products. Kim Hyo-sun reports.
President Trump said Monday that trade talks between Washington and Beijing are going well, expressing optimism they can finally reach a long-awaited truce. Speaking to reporters before a cabinet meeting, Trump explained that China has started to buy U.S. farm products in accordance with the first phase of the agreement reached 2 weeks ago. He also said last week that he hopes the two countries can sign a trade deal at the APEC summit, slated to be held in Chile in mid-November. President Trump's top economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, told Fox Business Network on Monday that the U.S. China trade talks continue to move in the right direction, adding that a lot of progress has been made. He also explained there is a possibility of removing the tariffs set to be imposed on China from December when the talks go well. But Kudlow also stressed Washington will not do a deal just to do a deal, insisting it has to be the right one for the U.S. Meanwhile, Beijing is reportedly seeking $2.4 billion in retaliatory sanctions against the U.S. According to Reuters, China has appealed to the WTO that Washington failed to comply with a WTO ruling in a 2012 tariff case that dates back to the Obama era. China insists anti-subsidy tariffs were imposed by Washington on its exports of solar panels and wind towers, which were valued at $7.3 billion at the time. The WTO's dispute settlement body is set to deliberate China's request next Monday. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump says the revised South Korea-U.S. free trade agreement is a fantastic one for Washington, adding it looks even better than what he had envisioned. Speaking to reporters on Monday ahead of a cabinet meeting, Trump also lashed out at the Obama administration for signing what he called a horrible trade deal for the United States. The revised South Korea-U.S. FTA went into effect as of January 1st, 2019, a year after the two allies initiated talks on amendments at Washington's request. South Korea's producer prices fell 0.7% on year in September. The Bank of Korea says its production price index came to 103.84, falling for the third consecutive month, mainly on lower global oil prices. On month, producer prices edged up 0.1% as agricultural goods prices rose because of a decrease in supply and higher demand over Korea's Thanksgiving holiday called Chuseok. Prices of industrial goods stayed the same on month. South Korea's Environment Ministry has decided against issuing emergency fine dust reduction measures today as the air has cleaned up a fair bit. That said, average daily concentrations of fine dust particles are forecast to be relatively bad for Incheon, northern Gyeonggi-do province, as well as Chungcheongnam-do province. However, other regions will see normal to good air quality, and that includes us here in Seoul. Even for regions recording bad levels, no emergency reduction measures will be issued as the levels will not exceed the threshold of 75 micrograms per cubic meter. It is the time of the year baseball fans in South Korea enjoy the most. It is the start of the Korean series, and this year's matchup is all the more special as two Seoul-based teams are squaring off for the very first time in the KBO's history. Our Lee Seung-jae has a preview of the championship series, which begins tonight.
One team is aiming to win their sixth championship title, the other their first. One manager is headed into his fifth straight Korean series, while this is a brand new experience for the other. Despite their differences, the Doosan Bears and the Kiwoom Heroes, the two teams set to begin their quest for the Korean series title, have one thing in common. They're both based in Seoul. For the first time in league history, two teams from the capital square off in the Korean series. The two teams want to carry their momentum into the Korean series. The Doosan Bears caught the SK Wyverns for first place and a ticket to the Korean series on the final day of the regular season. The Kiwoom Heroes, who finished third in the regular season, defeated their arch rivals, the LG Twins, and the defending champions SK Wyverns on the road to the championship series. But who has the edge in the big one? The Heroes have a better head-to-head record against the Bears this season, having won 9 and lost 7. But with the Bears enjoying a 3-week break waiting for their opponent, they are much more rested. And taking the mound later tonight, two American pitchers, Josh Lindblom and Eric Jokic. Doosan's Lindblom led the league with 20 wins this season, while the Heroes' Jokic had a solid 3-9 record with an above-average 3.13 ERA. The best-of-7 series kicks off at Jamsil Stadium at 6:30 p.m. Korea time in what's being dubbed Korea's Subway Series. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, in some cultural news, a night walk along the Doksugun Stonewall Walkway in central Seoul is set to give people a chance to experience what Korean culture was like in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The Jeong-dong Culture Night 2019 takes place this Friday and Saturday under the theme of time travel. In Jeong-dong, the city has prepared exhibitions, performances and hands-on activities for visitors. The city will also open up 26 nearby culture and history facilities at night, including the Doksugun Palace and the Jeong-dong Theatre. Now we're going to start our world news today with the never-ending drama over Brexit, drama that just refuses to die down, it seems. And in the latest twist, the Speaker of the House of Commons has refused to hold another vote on Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Brexit deal. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's connect to our Kim Dami. So, Dami, the Speaker said a second vote would be, quote, repetitive and disorderly.
Right, Mark. UK Parliamentary Speaker John Bercow said on Monday there will be no second vote on Prime Minister Johnson's Brexit deal because they will be basically asking the same question to Parliament twice.
In summary, today's motion is in substance the same as Saturday's motion, and the House has decided the matter. Today's circumstances are in substance the same as Saturday's circumstances. My ruling is therefore that the motion will not be debated today, as it would be repetitive and disorderly to do so.
Bercow added it will break long-standing conventions for members of parliament to debate and vote on the deal agreed in Brussels last week. Instead, the Speaker noted that it will pursue the route of getting the legislation required for Britain's departure from the EU through Parliament first, ruling out having a straight yes or no vote on the agreement. The government expressed a deep regret that the Speaker yet again denied a chance to deliver on the will of the British people, but signaled that it will proceed to introduce the necessary legislation. The UK is due to leave the EU in 10 days, with the UK government presenting the law that would implement the Brexit deal to the Commons. The parliamentary journey will begin on Tuesday local time. U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper says Washington is considering keeping some U.S. troops in northeastern Syria to help safeguard oil supplies from Islamic State militants. Following President Trump's decision to withdraw U.S. troops from Syria, more than 100 U.S. vehicles crossed the border into Iraq early on Monday local time. This comes after Turkey agreed to pause its offensive for 5 days under a truce with Washington. Esper told reporters during his trip to Afghanistan that some troops were still partner forces in their oil fields, and there have been discussions about keeping some of them there. But he said nothing has been decided yet, as the Pentagon is still looking for options.
Good morning and welcome news. The entire nation will enjoy decent air today. Easterly winds blew away all the dust, so enjoy the fresh breeze. But it's another day with wide temperature gaps. The cool and chilly start we had will turn into a balmy afternoon under sunny skies for most regions. So let's make the most of the beautiful autumn weather before winter takes hold. Afternoon temperatures will be in the 20s, similar to slightly higher than yesterday. Inland regions are forecast to enjoy lots of sunshine, while the East Coast will be rather cloudy. Meanwhile, Jeju will see rain from late afternoon. Jeju, as well as the East Coast, are forecast to see showers over the next couple of days, while temperature readings will gradually go down to what we would normally expect around this time of year. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all the news and weather we have for now on this Tuesday morning here in Seoul. Stay tuned to Arirang TV, and our next newscast will be coming up in just over 1 hour's time. So until then, goodbye.